Hi everyone, welcome to this this little video. I'm going to leave it quite dark today, just because this is quite a sad one for me. And when this is about this is a video about the late Meatloaf, who died about 4 days ago now, and I found myself getting very sad about it. And I really had to think about why. And I think I felt the same way, maybe not the same way about David Bowie when David Bowie died, but I felt similar to it, in the sense that I don't think I could really, hand on heart, consider myself like you get the Meatloaf fans, like super fans. And I would consider myself someone who was a fan of Meatloaf, but maybe more for, not necessarily just for his music, not necessarily just for his acting, but it was his attitude. And I was first introduced to Meatloaf. The thing is, I never understood how to take Meatloaf at the very beginning, and I don't think I still do. At the very beginning, I was like, "What? His name's what? Meatloaf. What is a meatloaf, Mum?" And I remember telling it to my mother, and just being like, "Mum, what is Meatloaf?" And it was this weird video came on, and he had this really scary sort of face. It was like Phantom of the Opera style sort of vibes, and you could see there, like, he's got all these prosthetics on, and he's looking into this like goblet or something, and his nails are all big and stuff, and it was just this larger than life thing. And there was this huge production video which went on for like 100,000 minutes. It was just this epic thing. And I remember it being Christmas time, and we were at my Auntie Anne's house, and there was nothing on TV, but you could bet that whatever channel you turned it on, I'd Do Anything for Love would come on. It was just everywhere. And there was this guy, he was simply larger than life, and he really was. And but it was theatrical. There was all these theatrics which were going on, and I was very confused by it. I'd never sort of been introduced by anything like this, especially like on something like Top of the Pops, which was quite, it had pop acts on it. It had bands, but this was a whole other thing entirely to me as a young lad. And I remember seeing Meatloaf's records, and seeing like Bat Out of Hell, and thinking, whoa, this guy is gonna be heavy, and this Anything for Love thing is just like the ballad on the record. And then the more I started to hear from him, the more I was just like, oh, I really don't get what's going on. Like, I really had no idea. I mean, it was like this big stage. I was like, this guy's wearing frilly shirts, and he was just this mad kind of over the top, almost, it was almost like rock opera what he was doing. And I really didn't understand what he was sort of about. And there was like horn sections, there was pianos. Now, I notoriously, when it comes to rock music, I notoriously don't really like keyboards, like hammered organs. Don't really like keyboards, maybe a bit of padding here and there. I really don't like piano on hard rock songs. Guns N' Roses just about won me over with songs like November Rain. But I was always with Matt Sorum when he was like, I thought I was joining this badass rock band. What the hell's with the piano? And I understood that sentiment completely. Now, with Meatloaf, people would talk about him and everything, and I understood what he was about more with Real Dead Ringer for Love when he performed with Cher, and I just thought that, and it was just a great song, and I there was no doubt he was just amazing at his craft, just these incredible sort of vocals, and he just looked like he was so swept up in it, and I couldn't really tell if it was an act. And the more interviews that I've seen of him, the more I sort of think that it's where that characterness and that reality, they start to blend, and you can't quite tell who's who anymore. He talked a lot about being characters when he would have triggers for himself. I think he did something like I think he did this and like that was his Bat Out of Hell character would come out, and then he would do something else like for another character to come out, and for another character to come out, or pow, do you know what I mean? Who cares? But he had all these different ways of doing things and bringing out these characters, which is very interesting, because it's not like method acting or you know, I'm an actor myself. That was where I was going to go, and I liked hearing about his acting, because he considered himself an actor, and I always considered myself an actor before I even wanted to be a musician. It was acting or music. I went down the music route, but I've always loved script writing, acting, and playing roles, writing characters, all kinds of stuff like that. So I think I always respected Meatloaf and his ability to tell a story. For me, his storytelling and the life that he's led was so amazing. And when he was like a youngster, you got to check out, there's a story he had about I think it was when John F. Kennedy was shot, and he was in the vehicle that he was in was commandeered by a Secret Service agent, and he was like, "Secret Service, is this your vehicle?" Yes. And then he goes, "Move over, kids." And the guy was plowing down to get to like, I think it was like the White House or something, and they went back to school, and they were like, "Why are you late? Where were you?" And they said, "Well, we were at the," I forget where they were taken. Oh, it was like the hospital where JFK was taken. That was it. And no one believed them. And the news came on that evening, and he was on the news. There was a picture of him and his buddies, and they were talking to some Secret Service agents and stuff. It was just mind blowing. He had all these stories, and it's just. And again, I'm finding it difficult to kind of articulate this. I'm getting kind of choked up about it, because he was so well respected by so many people in the music industry. And when I look at someone like that who refused to be called like a legend or rock star, and like he really stayed so humble, and I really respected that about him and his work ethic. I'm just gonna have a look through some of his wiki pages now, because it's just mind-blowing, like how anyone can fit all this into one lifetime. I mean, looking at his discography, and I think this is why he wanted to be called an actor more than a musician. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is it 12? Is that 12 albums? So he had 12 albums, which I can see here on his Wikipedia page. And even if that's wrong, and even if like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 6, what was that? 20, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 31 tours, 31 probably massive tours. You just look at his filmography, it's insane. From 1962 all the way down to 2014, and he's just in all these films. And then you look at all these things in television from 1978 all the way down to 2018. The guy was prolific beyond, I don't want to say beyond measure, because I know there's some very, very hard-working individuals in music, but he moved over, like he just jumped back and forth. I think because he got started in theatre, and theatre was his way into music, and the twain sort of met there. I myself, I turned down a role in Jesus Christ Superstar because I was going into being in a band. I sort of said, well, I'm not going into theatre, darlings. And I didn't want to do that. But he really embraced that world, and just was able to jump back and forth. But his ability to tell a story it's just amazing. If you get the chance to see any Meat Loaf, well, of course you have the opportunity, you have YouTube, but I think it's just absolutely wonderful listening to him talk. I mean, just look at that. Just, he just gets in your face. Yeah, he's a really sweet guy as well. There's this real sweetness about him, and a very like a humble and delicate thing about him as well. When he talks about his music, he's very, very passionate, but I always sensed a sense of like fragility underneath everything, and I think that really shone. There was this juxtaposition in his role in Fight Club when he played Robert Paulson. And this is where I was really introduced to Meat Loaf again. I know he was in, people will say, oh, he had like a bit part in Wayne's World. But when he played Robert Paulson in Fight Club, like this movie, it shook things up for me as a young teen, because it began to question a lot of things. I was stepping into manhood, and I was getting all these feelings of aggression and frustration, and seeing these different characters in this movie really made. I might even do another podcast on Fight Club, and sort of talk about it, because my views on Fight Club have sort of changed over the years. But with Meat Loaf, when he was Robert Paulson, like, he goes on like Bob developed bitch tits because he was an Olympic athlete. He was a weight trainer, but he was a juicer, what they call a juicer. So he was doing steroids, and then this stuff, it just messed with his body, and he started producing estrogen, and he grew breasts, and there was that masculine sort of thing where there was a fight club and all the men were getting together just to kind of pound the absolute crap out of each other, not to even win a fight, but it was this sense of, it was really interesting. Meat Loaf's character in Fight Club was very interesting because he had this very sensitive voice. Okay, Cornelius, you can cry. And he wanted him to cry. There was all this about being men with emotions, allowing ourselves to release these emotions. And he was almost like a mother figure. When you look at Meat Loaf with Edward Norton here, just comforting him and really consoling him when they're in that. And you see the look on Meat's face, and when he's holding Edward there, and you just sort of think, it's a sense of real compassion and understanding. And you go to that from something like to Rocky Horror. It just absolutely blows my mind, that the roles that this guy could play. And he was a real pure actor. He was a real pure artist. He just could really jump between so much. And I think that with Robert Paulson, you know, you go from this very gentle character, and who's been this champion bodybuilder, and his kids won't talk to him, and his wife left him, and he's got nothing left, and he like hobbles around, and he's this huge big guy, and now he's full of like female hormones because he's pumped himself through with too much testosterone. And then in the next second you see him as this freight train of absolute power and aggression when they're fighting, and he was almost unbeatable, and he was just like just smashing the hell out of Edward Norton. And it was just a very, very powerful performance. And that, his name is Robert Paulson. Has sort of got into sort of the underground scene vernacular of like sayings, and it sort of means a lot of different things to different people. And I just really, that kind of put Meatloaf back on my map in a lot of ways. And I began to become sort of more interested in more in his life, because I felt that he was a very interesting individual. He'd obviously gone through, and he remained, from what I saw, he remained enthusiastic about life and his work and about politics right up to the very end. He never really gave up. I'm just skimming through his Wikipedia now, and the amount of record seeds sold, it's still selling like crazy. Bat Out of Hell is just still selling like crazy today. What is it? I mean, the story of his name is very interesting. I mean, as a young boy, saying, "Oh, that's Meatloaf," I'm like, what the heck is that? Meatloaf? You can't have that as a name, as someone who's this big like stadium rock star. It never made any sense. But then when you go from this to this, you got this to this, and then to this, and you sort of think, well, of course of course you can be called Meatloaf. You can be called anything you want when you're that much of a versatile. And he'd hate me calling him a legend, which I respect, so I won't call him a legend. But when you're that much of a versatile performer, when you care about your craft enough, when you are so good at your craft that you can turn up and command thousands of people, front bands, if it's like a rock band, if it's like on stage, if you can be the theater guy, if you can be flamboyant, if you can be really intense, if you can act violent, I just think it's a hell of a life. Just a hell of a life. It is. It's a huge. I don't know if I want to call it a. I hate to say it's a huge loss. I'm very sad. that Meatloaf is no longer walking this earth. But when you look at what he's given to the music industry, when you see how happy people are when his music comes on, when you just hear the tributes pouring in, I don't want to say it's sad. I want to say that's a life well lived. So like I say, I would call myself a Meatloaf fan. I wouldn't say I know a great deal about his music. I wouldn't say I know. There's a drop in the water of what I know about his acting. That's very clear from just a cursory look at his Wikipedia. And I challenge anyone else to really know much about what he's done. Sold more than 65 million albums worldwide. It's just incredible. I just seen this. The first album stayed in the charts for over 9 years. Still sells an estimated 200,000 copies annually, and is on the list of best-selling albums. What an achievement! What an achievement! What an absolute. I don't know what to call him, but what a performer! What an absolute pro! So this has just been my little tribute to the late Meatloaf, who died January 20th, 2022, age 74, in Nashville, Tennessee. And he was a singer and an actor, active from 1968 to 2022. What a life. Meatloaf, wherever you are, sir, thank you for the music and everything else that you did. Just incredible. Thanks very much, guys. I'm gonna leave it there, and go stick a Meatloaf record on or something. Stay frosty. I'll speak to you guys soon. Thank you. Bye bye.